Hey everyone, thanks for jumping in and joining me for this how to receive messages and guidance from the universe rather than thinking it. I'm coming live from my Facebook page. Anyone else wants to come in and have a chat while we're here, then that would be awesome. I'm just going to go into a little bit more details about the difference between receiving messages and thinking messages, and how we can get access to infinite wisdom in the universe. So first off, I want to just explain the different things that we are dealing with when we're talking about receiving rather than thinking. So of course, what we're talking about is what's going on in our heads. So what's going on in our heads will determine what information we receive. I think a lot of people tend to deal with, if you want to call it, voices that aren't very supportive. Maybe we might want to call them negative voices that are in our head. A lot of people say, I can't trust the voices or the information that I'm given because I don't really get lots of supportive information. My brain or whatever's going on in my head is actually saying that I'm not good enough, that I can't do the things that I want to do. And that's pretty typical of being a human on this planet. What I want to explain is what that is and the difference between the voices, pretty much. So if you have negative voices coming through, I don't want to really call it negative because that's just a phrase that someone has decided to put on a thought or an experience. Maybe we can just call it voices that aren't very nice. I don't know. Anyway, so when we've got voices that are coming through, thoughts, and I call it thoughts as well, thoughts that are coming through that aren't really supportive, what I usually say about those is they aren't really our voices. Those thoughts and those thoughts, those feelings and those voices that come through aren't actually ours. And let me explain a little bit more about that. Because if it's our voice or the universal voice, it's always supportive. It's always giving us really great guidance as to what we can do. The voices and the thoughts and messages that come through that aren't really supportive are usually those voices and messages that have been picked up from other people. So when I explain the voices that we pick up from other people, what that means is we've been around people or experiences where the energy of that person can actually come onto your energy. Because we're all just energy, right? So their energy can attach to you via, just like getting a virus or a cold. And especially if you've had an experience where you've been with people, might be parents, might be other family members, might be even teachers or whatever, where their energy and the stuff they've been projecting out to you has been negative, if you want to call it negative. What happens is that energy actually comes onto your energy and then you keep that within your energy. So it sounds like it's from you, but in actual fact, it's theirs. So whenever you get those negative voices or the ones that go, you can't do that or whatever, you can just send them back simply by just acknowledging that they weren't yours to begin with and that you can then release that energy back and you'll start to feel a lot lighter. You won't get that recurring voice that's coming up, saying that you're not good enough or whatever. So I just wanted to just say that first off is that you can trust this, the voices that come through, the messages that come through, the information, because if it's not supportive and if it's not helpful, then it's just not yours and you can send that back to wherever that's come from. I'll give you an example so you can kind of feel into what that feels like. With the voices that are quite negative, if you think about if someone's yelling at you and you can feel the energy come onto you, that is a really good example of how energy can be transferred, and how you can feel their negativity. And again, like if you walk into a room or if you're dealing with someone who's negative, you can feel that, and you can easily take that on for lots of different reasons. That's probably another webinar about why we take on energy, because there's actually really good reasons why we do it. Most of it is from a learning point of view, but for now we're just going to talk about voices and messages because I'm not going to go off track. So let me just say that, yeah, any voices, messages, information that you receive is always supportive when it's from the universe or from within, higher self, inner wisdom, whatever you want to call it. And I'm kind of talking about both today. I personally, yes, I can receive messages from wherever and within any kind of element from whoever in the universe. Hi, Natasha. So I can receive those, but at the end of the day, when I'm seeking guidance, I don't really specifically say who I'm getting this information from. I just simply then just ask the questions, and then I will receive the information. I don't really care where it comes from. I can distinguish between the voices and whether they've, where they come from, and then you can ask more questions. But at the end of the day, again, that's probably another webinar as to who we're talking to. This one's just getting universal guidance or maybe higher self or inner guidance. That is pretty much what I want to talk about today. And also the differences between the messages and everything else. So with your receiving information, as I said, anything negative or not supportive is just not yours. You just send that back to wherever that's come from. So then the next thing is like, how does this all work, like in here? So we have our subconscious at the back, what I call at the back, I don't even really know, but that's just kind of where I think it is. Our subconscious at the back pretty much just records everything that happens in our life, and that actually then, from these experiences that we have, it records it and then puts together what I call associates, the stuff that we're getting from what we're recording to actually what we perceive as going on. So this is where you could have 5 different people having the same experience, but they'll perceive it differently. And then in the future, how they deal with similar experiences will be similar to their initial experience, because that's just how the subconscious works. So this is where a lot of people will say, oh, I don't really know why I have these blocks, or I don't really know why I have this resistance or whatever. It's usually from this. This subconscious records everything that's going on and then puts together from what you've perceived that's gone on in the first place, and then creates more of that perception and memory link in the future, which then carries on patterns. So that's where patterns and so forth come from. And that's how that part of the brain pretty much works. So if something's not working in your life and you don't know why, you could probably be guaranteed that it's your subconscious that's running the show. You just don't know what association you've created from an initial experience or a situation, which has created a perception of it being good or bad, right or wrong, or whatever, and then that creates more of it from for that in the future. So anyway, so then what happens is we have our conscious mind. I kind of put that at the front of our brain, if you want to call it. If you Google it, it actually says your conscious mind only operates 12% of your actual brain capacity, which is kind of crazy because for some reason we listen to that one more than anything else. I suppose the reason why we do that is because we don't actually get access so much as easy to everything else. So the conscious mind, I'm not a brain scientist. It's kind of the information that I've received and what I run with, and it kind of feels true to me. So again, whatever feels true to you is awesome. And if it's not true, well, that doesn't really matter, because you can create whatever reality you want from whatever truth you want. So this is what is true to me, and what I've experienced from working with our brains and voices and messages. So when I connect to our conscious mind, people probably might want to call that your ego. what your ego does, and I don't know if you realize this, it jumps in all the time and kind of butts into what's going on in your life. And that's kind of annoying because you could be naturally just doing stuff that is naturally, you know, in alignment with what you want to do. And then that conscious mind will jump in and go, well, you can't do that, or it's too hard, or be careful, or it's dangerous, or whatever. So as you can kind of see from what I'm saying, is that conscious mind technically is the part of your brain that keeps your body safe. Now that is its purpose. Now that conscious mind, which is 12% of your brain, technically its job is to keep your body safe. It knows that this body has a birth and an ending, which is the truth. And that's how it runs the show. It runs the show from this place of this body is going to end. It just is. So when a conscious mind is running from a place of this body is going to end, what it then decides to do is to create as many fears as possible so that we don't step out of these comfort zones that we like to sit in, and to try and keep ourselves safe, because that's its job. Its job is to keep our body safe. Its job is to run our bodies, make our hearts beat, make our brains work, make our blood pump, our legs run, all that sort of thing. So I tend to think that this conscious mind, its job is pretty much to run our bodies and to keep us going through the day. And what I think it's doing is it's overstepping the mark by creating fears and perceptions that aren't true to keep our body safe. Like, that's kind of what it thought its job was to keep our body safe. But what I've decided to do, and again, you can just decide what feels good for you, is to give that conscious mind its job back in just running your body, but not to keep your body safe from a place of I'm already safe. Because of course what you think and what you believe becomes your reality. If you're running from a place of I'm not safe from this conscious mind, then your reality will create more experiences of where you're not safe, and to prove to it and to you that that is true. If we then say to our conscious mind, well, you can just run my body, and I will receive the information that I need to know to then run my life, then what happens is I will say my conscious mind does not think anymore. I don't receive the fearful, don't do this because it's scary. Don't do this, don't see this, don't whatever, because that's really what I've given my intuition and my inner feelings, my inner gut, if you want to call it, inner wisdom. I kind of let that do that job because it actually runs from truth rather than from fear. So what you can do is, if you do have, you want to call it, maybe call it ego, or you might just want to call it your conscious mind, is you typically just then say, you can have the job of running my body. I am going to use other ways to think. And this is what I want to teach today, is how these other ways work. So if you're in this kind of area and you know a little bit about receiving information, whether it's psychic medium, channeling, anything like that, again, they're just all words or phrases. Everyone can do this. It is a sixth sense that we have been given. I am not the only one on the planet who can do this. Every single person has the physiology to be able to receive messages. Everyone does. And it's called a pineal gland, which is in your brain, which is kind of right in the center there. And it's almost like the antenna to receiving information. Now, everyone has that. Everyone can receive messages, and everyone can pretty much do this, which is why I'm really passionate about sharing and teaching this concept, because receiving your own information is not only empowering, but it actually creates a truth for you that you can then live your life from there on, rather than waiting for someone else to tell you. Also, that whole theory of just not knowing, like who doesn't really want to not know where they're going, what's happening in their life, what they can do, and to receive the answers is really powerful. So this is where I'd like for you guys to do this, and please, I want everyone to like to know that they can do this. There's two things that will stop you from doing this. Well, number one is those negative voices that I was talking about earlier that can stop you. I want you to acknowledge the difference. And then the other one is this conscious mind that says, oh, hi. Your conscious mind will then be the other part of your brain that will stop you from receiving. So that's the one that doubts that information is true, the information that comes through that you're maybe just thinking it. But I'm going to get you guys right now, to feel the difference. Oh, I'm so happy to see you too, even though I'm not seeing you, but hi. I want you guys now, so you guys who have joined me live, but anyone else who kind of joins me afterwards, grab a pen and paper. Or you can just play around with what we're doing here. And I want you to feel the difference into thinking and receiving. And what this is going to do is it's going to help you to really connect to the fact that you are receiving information rather than thinking it, because they are two very different things. Once you start doing this, you'll actually find that, number one, it's a lot easier to receive than to think. And technically, probably for the last couple of years, I have pretty much decided not to think anymore, not to hold information in my head, because I like to receive information constantly. And that means when you do go out and you are constantly aware of what's going on around us, we're constantly receiving information, which then helps us to pick up the messages and signs which help guide us along the path. So then I think to myself, why do we need to think when we're completely guided the whole time? I don't know. It's just the way we've been taught, but we're going to do something different. So get a pen and paper, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a process where we're going to see the difference between and feel the difference between thinking and receiving. So on that piece of paper, I want you to write down the word thinking, and then I want you to write down the word receiving. Doesn't matter if it's like one above the other or next to each other or whatever. So under the thinking section, I want you to try and sit there and have a memory, or I want you to try and think about, let me just say, like, maybe I want to do something that's because this is all guided, so I'm just kind of going as I go. I don't really have any, I don't really actually have any notes or anything. So let me just think, what do we want to think? I'm going to ask you to think, actually I'm actually receiving to see what you need to think. It's so funny, doesn't make sense, does it? I need you guys to just think about maybe something someone said that was nice last week. Okay, so I want you just to sit there, and I want you to kind of go, this is actually you going into your memory. And I want you to think about, okay, so think about something that someone said that was nice to you last week. So what you then do is you might go through the process of thinking, okay, so what did I do last week? What was really nice? And then what people you came across, and then try and think about, okay, so what experience did I have last week that someone said something really nice about me or to me or whatever. And you guys can post it in the group here, or on the page here if you want to share the first thoughts that come through. Pretty much when you're thinking about what happened last week, I want you to acknowledge that you can kind of feel the clogs ticking in your brain, and you're really having to concentrate on what's going on in there. So I want you to acknowledge that this is thinking. Like, you can see that you're going through your brain, you're trying to pull out from your brain specific information or memory as to what went on last week. And you can see that you're searching through there, you're trying to think. To me, it gives me a headache. Trying to think. So whether you get an answer or not doesn't matter. I just want you to acknowledge that you are trying to think of an answer, and what that feels like. So just let me know when you guys are ready to go on to receiving and the difference between receiving. Because there's a very different feeling, and this is how you'll know the difference. It's a really different feeling into thinking it and receiving it. So thinking is kind of, well, if you see someone thinking, you see them like kind of, putting their brain to like squinting and trying to think of what the answer is. I want to acknowledge too that when we're thinking about the answer, you pretty much are only limited to this, what's in your brain, which I have decided that from now on, I'm going to have access to the universal brain or the universal computer or whatever, because I do have an experience where a couple of times I've been shown things. Like there was once I was shown a band, and I had no idea, like a picture of a band and like a quiz or whatever. I had no idea who it was, so I just received the information. That's all that. Another time where I was shown a dessert of some sort, and I was like, I don't really know what that is. So I just said, I just asked to receive the information, and that came through. So that, like, I don't think I can make those things up. I can't think them, but you can definitely receive them. And this is where there is a video on my YouTube channel which shows you how to have conversations with the universe. I pretty much recommend you have daily conversations with the universe, because the information that comes back to you it blows your mind. There's no way, number one, that you can think it. Number two, it gives you so much clarity that you go through your whole day just knowing what the answers are to everything. So, and the other thing I like about it is that no one's telling you this, so it's actually, well, no one, it's universal, so it is the energy of the universe which tells it to you, but it's all aligned with who you are. So that's where you pretty much like literally receive what you need to know from your perspective and not from someone else's. When people give you their thoughts or their ideas around different things, it's always with their filter in mind. So it's always around their experiences. It's always around what they perceive to be the truth. Whereas when you receive and get your own answers, it's all aligned with you and all aligned with your own filters. So that's why they work. So let me go on to now. I just want you to acknowledge the thinking. The thinking is the straining, the trying to go through your head and trying to think about what the answer is. The next one is the receiving. And what we're going to do is, for you to feel the difference between thinking and receiving, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get you to think about a statement that you know to be true. So the statement might be, well, could be false, it doesn't really matter. What I want to do is I just want to have the exercise of receiving. So the statement might be, actually, maybe it could be a statement that you don't know the answer to. I don't know. No, we'll do that. We'll do that next. So, okay. So the statement is pretty much, whether it's a physical issue, you could just say, and this could be just an issue. So what I want you to do is I want you to feel into, okay, maybe just the statement, I have a headache right now, or I have to go to work today, or just a statement, which what we're doing is we're going to receive the number out of 10 as to whether, like, what the truth is around this statement. So the statement just needs to be anything that you can measure out of 10 as to how true it is. So what's another statement? Maybe you can say, I'm funny, I'm silly, any kind of statement about yourself, pretty much. I want you to write that down. I might use a statement. Let me just think about a statement I can use. Okay, I'm going to use I'm funny. So maybe if you want to write down I'm funny, I'm serious, I'm whatever. Whatever you want to write down about yourself and how true you want to find out if that is or not. I'm funny. Okay, so write down I'm funny, I am, I'm serious, I'm whatever you want to know about yourself. You just write down, what the statement is as to what you want to check. And then the next thing we need to do is we're going to check the truth or the validity of this out of 10. So 10s being that this is the most true and 0s being that it's not true at all. So if you write down the statement, you know, and sometimes you might want to write down a few statements. I am funny, I am serious. I'm going to write it down for me as well. So I am funny, I am serious. I might even write down I am successful. And maybe write down, and you can write these as well if you want to use the same ones. I'm funny, I'm serious, I'm successful, I am loved. Okay, I'll just write those things down. So you write them down. I've kind of just done them like this. Excuse my writing. Then what we're going to do is we're going to measure the truth of those out of 10, and this is where we're using our bodies and the universe to receive the information. So when I say the statement is true out of 10, 10's being that yes, it's the most true, and 0's being that it's not true at all. So when I say I am funny, what's the first number that jumps into your head out of 10? So, okay, so Vidya's got I'm very confident, I'm visible to people. So write those down. Then I want you to literally read that sentence out and say, okay, so, you know, I'm confident. What's the first number that jumps into your head out of 10 as to how true that is? I'm going to say I am funny. It comes up with a 6. Just the first thing that comes to mind is a 6. I am serious comes up as a 7. I am successful comes up as an 8. And I am loved comes up as a 10, okay, as to how true they are. So I want you to have these couple of questions as to what you want to ask, and then you're actually wanting to receive the number out of 10. I want you to acknowledge that you aren't thinking that number. It's actually something. So a 5 in confidence, that's awesome, Vidya. So write those things down and write down the numbers, and then I'll tell you what you can do next. But I want you to feel the difference to receiving the number. Visible as 6. Yeah. Write those answers now down. So feel the difference. So you didn't actually think that number at all. It pretty much just, you could either feel that it was that number, or you thought, you could see it in your head as that is the answer. So that is the receiving the information. And that's just a really simple way for you to test the difference between thinking, trying to think of a memory, to simply just receiving the information. So I've got a 6, 7, 8, and 10. Vidya's got a 5 for confidence and a 6 for visibility. Okay. Now, if we want to be more funny or more confident or more successful or whatever, all we now need to do is on the next to that is that. So Vidya, you might want to say, okay, so for me to become more confident, what do I need to do? And I want you just to ask that question and then keep your brain blank. I'm going to say, okay, I'm funny, I'm the 6. If I want to be more funnier, what do I need to do to be more funnier or whatever? Now, I'm not going to think that. I'm going to have a clear brain, and I'm just going to receive the first thing that pops into my head. So the first thing I'm actually seeing something in front of me. So it's like something else is right in front of me, which is kind of showing me that is the answer. So you might, when you're receiving information, be shown something in your surroundings, which is the answer. You might just have a thought or a memory pop up in your head. You might be guided or receive a memory of an advert that you'd seen or a song. It could be anything. It could be a word, anything that comes into your head. So I am funny. When I say I want to be more funny, again, it's just I don't want to think it. I want to receive the information as to how I can do that. Then I want to recheck the numbers and show you how you're not thinking these things, you're receiving the information. So if I'm going to say I'm more funny, I want to be more funny, what do I need to do? The first thing that comes into mind is, it's really weird, but maybe like a clown. A clown image just comes into my head. Visual, if you want to say, what do I need to do to be more confident, whatever the first thing comes in. So now when that thought comes into your head, you then need to work out what that means. So if you get a thought that comes through or receive the information, what you can then, I want to be fitter, I asked, I got kicked out of bed now to go for a walk, thanks. Okay, go for a walk. Hey, what number, Karen, did you get out of 10? But even that, so Karen's actually given me a really good example, is that you can say, I want to be fitter. Okay, what number is that out of 10? Receive the information rather than think it. And then if she says, and this is what I wanted to use as an example, okay, so what do I now need to do to be more fitter? You then, Karen's received, well, I need to go for a walk. Okay, so if you go for a walk, how much more fitter will that make you? And then you can receive a new number, again, because you can't think these numbers, you just have to keep receiving them. So Karen, if like an 8, if you want to be fitter, well, that's true, that's an 8. If you then say, and it might be throwing around different concepts here, because being I want to be fitter is different to I am fitter or I am fit. So maybe if you say I am fit, what number is that out of 10? And then say if I then want to be fitter, what do I need to do to increase that number? So if you say I'm fit, you might get a 4 or a 5 that pops up. Then you might say, okay, so believe in myself comes up as a 7. So then you say, what do I need to do to believe in myself more? Receive the information. Oh, 3. Karen's a 3 for fit. Okay, so I am fit is a 3. So now, Karen, if you say I'm going to go for a walk, what number am I now out of 10? Again, you'll receive the new number as to how much more fitter you'll be if you go for a walk. I hope you guys get this concept. What we're doing is we're completely receiving guidance as to where we're at, and then also where we can be and what we need to do. And I want you just to see the difference and feel the difference. To get more organised on visibility comes to a 7. So playing around with all of those and saying, okay, so what else do I need to do? 7 for effort. You play around with all these things. So if for me, like the information that came through about, I am funny, then I've got shown a vision of a clown. Well, that to me, like, I don't want to be a clown. So if you can even receive the information, and if you take it literally, then you could get quite confused. So you can actually ask more questions. Again, you don't have to think of the answers. The answers will come to you by keeping your brain clear, and you just need to receive it. So if you're not getting the answers that you want, if you ask the question, what do I need to do to be more funny? Or what do I need to do to be more fit? Or what do I need to do for visibility or confidence? What you then can, if you're not getting any thoughts that come through, number one, your conscious mind's jumped in. So you kind of have to be okay with that, because it's kind of run the show for how many years that you've been alive, maybe even past lives as well. So what you can actually do is you can just acknowledge, okay, conscious mind's jumped in, maybe a little bit of subconscious as well, and belief systems as well. So you literally then go into emptying your whole mind, like completely be okay with sitting there and having nothing in it. And then what you do is you ask the question over and over and over again. So if we're saying I'm successful or I am fit or whatever, and you're not getting an answer, you just go, I am fit, like, or how can I be more fit? How can I be more fit? And I find it's easier to kind of stare into, or you can close your eyes. And then you just keep asking the question. And it's funny, I mean, because I do this every day, I can even acknowledge that I will receive guidance about everything, about my life every second of every day, but we don't pick up on them because they are thoughts that come in and go out. And it's funny, most of the time I will be only reminded of the information that's come through simply by then someone else saying, oh, what about this? And I'm like, oh my God, I was thinking about that the other day, whereas I didn't really recognize in that moment, like I didn't stop and say, oh, I'm thinking about such and such, this must be really important, or this must be something that I need to know. So usually another person like later on in that day or down the track, will then have fun, Karen, enjoy your walk. That's where other people will be the other messengers to the initial message that you're getting. It's really, this stuff is quite simple. The only thing that stops us is our conscious mind and our subconscious, which has been running the show for such a long time. So what you do is you just keep asking the question, and then literally you will receive the answer. Like what the girls have done today, you can technically get whatever like number that you need to know around whatever it is that just pops into your head. And that's a really good way to start to test and acknowledge the difference between thinking and receiving, but also to trust that you can't think these numbers up. Like when I do possibility and probability with people or whatever, they could really want a specific answer or a specific thing to be true, and then when they get the number, it's really low. You can't think that, because if you thought it, then it would have been higher than what it actually is. So this information that comes through, and it's a combination between universal wisdom as well as, you know, your inner wisdom, which comes through, and it tells you and guides you as to what you need to know and where, you know, what you need to do. So pretty much, and I'll just explain how I kind of got into doing this, was I predominantly was an EFT practitioner, and what happened is I worked with lots and lots of people. EFT is just tapping, so tapping on pressure points. And what we would do is we would use this test and measure system. So, oh, that's so cool, Vidya. I'm so glad you're going to use this all the time, because it's really powerful. I mean, technically it wasn't meant to be for this purpose, but I mean, this is another tool probably that we have. I was more just wanting to for you to feel the difference between thinking and receiving. But yeah, you can use this for anything really. And to help you to really receive the guidance that you need to know for what you need to do and what you want to do for the future. And what's going to work pretty much. But so how I got into this was technically tapping with people, and we would work on true statements, which is you know, I'm unhappy, I'm depressed, I'm whatever. What would then happen is we would then measure that as true out of 10, and then we would work on tapping that out physically out of our bodies, removing the energy, removing the belief systems, and changing it. And what we had to keep doing is and if you've done EFT work with me before, you do actually have to keep checking the number to see where you're at, and technically the where you want to go is you want to actually get the number down to 0. So even people would get the number down to like a 1 or even a half out of 10 from tapping it down. And even though they want it to be gone, it'll still pop up as a 0.5 or it'll still pop up as a 1. You can't make that up, because you do want it to be gone. But this is the actual truth as to what is true for you at that current moment. You can't make that up. So by simply using that process of receiving the numbers and receiving the numbers and receiving the numbers, you know, I can pretty much receive the numbers for anyone, anywhere, for anything, because I can tune into their energy. But when you're doing it for yourself, it's like you can check anything, work on anything using this process of just checking the number. And that really helps for you to connect to the receiving rather than the thinking, because you don't actually know what that is at that time. You can't make it up. And then, I mean, you can use processes. I've just used a little process of receiving more information to be able to change that number. You can use tapping. You can use so many different other tools. I've got the universal mindset technique, all that sort of thing, that can clear and change that. And you can create a new reality and check that number again from what is actually true. Now, this is a very, very basic receiving exercise. And I just wanted to do this as a really, really basic exercise for you to connect to what it feels like to receive information. And it's more just feeling the difference between the two. So for you guys that have joined afterwards, that's awesome. And I hope that this has helped. If you've got any questions, can you please pop them below about the receiving if you're not receiving anything that comes through. It is good just to initially just do the numbers, because the numbers isn't really anything that you have to think too hard on. Then that next step is receiving the guidance, which is what do I need to do? As I said, it could come through as a thought, like as in, oh, I should just go and for a bike ride. Like Karen said, I should just go for a walk. I could just, you could even get something silly come through, like go and have a sleep. I remember I got that guidance once to go and have a sleep, and I resisted it for ages because who's got time to go and have a sleep, right? Then when I realised that after a while things were slowing down and I was actually getting quite stagnant in my work. So I then decided to listen to the thoughts that were coming through, which was going to have a sleep. When I went and had a sleep, I got so much more information on my next steps. So you don't really know what the result is going to be. And this is where I say get out of the universe's way, because the universe is completely guiding you as to what these next steps are. And if you get a thought to go to the shop, or if you get a thought to go and have a sleep, or walk on the beach, or ring a friend, or whatever, it's not your job to work out why or how. It's just that you just do that. Yes, sleeping's amazing for receiving next steps and information. If you do get that guidance to go and have a sleep, don't think that you're being lazy. Again, that's your conscious mind creating thought processes, and you'll feel the difference. And I want to acknowledge too that the thinking usually comes along with a feeling, the thinking and the receiving comes through with a feeling. They've all got feelings attached to them. If the feeling isn't feeling good, you can be guaranteed that it's the conscious mind and the subconscious mind giving you this information. What you really want to do is tap into the universal wisdom or your inner wisdom, which is always supportive, and not running off patterns. But again, we need to acknowledge that when patterns show up or thoughts show up that are true, and if something comes up that isn't feeling good, it's another message for you. It's another thing that's saying this is something that's there that's holding you back, and not to ignore it, but actually allow it to come up. And so you can deal with it. Again, you can give that a number out of 10 as to how true that is for you at the current moment. And then you can look at, well, what do I need to do to make this untrue? Again, there's so many tools you can use, but a lot of it you can actually shift through awareness and consciousness. And if you then realize, like if you're looking at this work that we're doing, you probably realize that you need a hell of a lot of consciousness when you're dealing with receiving information, because we are receiving information all the time, and you've got to be so present in the current moment to be able to pick it all up. Because who gets, a lot of the shoulds and the have tos? Yeah, that's really cool. And shoulding and have tos, again, are usually the difference between thinking and receiving. A lot of the shoulds and the have tos are the thinking. Thank you, Vidya, for mentioning that. The receiving is always guided information that just feels true, and it feels like that is the next steps. So, and just acknowledging all of this that comes up. So any thoughts, so thinking will tell me all the shoulds and the have tos. Absolutely. And there's such a difference between thinking. I want you to acknowledge that the thinking is actually hard work. But we've been taught that hard work is good. We're now stepping into a paradigm and a lifestyle where we don't need to actually think anymore. We can receive whatever we need to know, and then all we do need to do is act on it. One of the most important things is that we have to be in the current moment most of the time. I don't know about you guys, but most people do either live in the future. I wonder what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. Again, that's your conscious mind trying to keep you safe. And then you've got from the past, well, whatever's happened in the past, if that kind of is keeping you in, maybe anger or frustration or whatever. Again, you don't even really know half the time what's there until you delve into the subconscious. But what I do like to do is use current situations to show us what you're actually hanging on to from the past, because they will always show you what those patterns are. And then I like to go into the subconscious, almost like I use different processes, but we don't need to use hypnosis or anything to get into that into the subconscious to find out where that all comes from. And then we just change that, so then that changes the current reality. So and then Rich is saying, I don't stick to that and I really need to stop and rest. Started living in the present with more ease. Thank you. Help me with overthinking. Oh, okay. Thank you, Trudy. So overthinking, I want to talk about overthinking and focus. So focusing on the current moment is really cool. And the way that you can do that is simply by putting something in front of you and saying, I'm just going to focus right on this in this current moment, and then having a greater awareness of what is actually happening in this current moment and staying there is really cool. It's kind of like the phrase, you know, take time to smell the roses. It's like you have to stop to really be present in the current moment. There is a place for overthinking, and overthinking not only is a place of trying to keep you safe, we need to acknowledge this stuff, because if you don't acknowledge the patterns of the overthinking, then it still runs in the background without you knowing. Whatever it is that you don't want, bring that up to the surface and acknowledge it and going, okay, I can see that the overthinking has helped me to now, like, I'm being thankful for it. The overthinking has helped me to now. It's actually kept me going. It's got me doing things. It's kept me safe, perceived safe, you know, all that sort of thing. And so I don't know if you can feel this, but as soon as you acknowledge your overthinking and be thankful for it and grateful for it, you kind of then feel it drifting away, because then it's like, okay, I've done my job now. I can go now. Whereas, you know, again, the whole process, what you resist persists. So if you try and stop the overthinking, what then happens is it continues on in the background without you even knowing it. And it'll keep biting you in the butt time and time again. The overthinking is that conscious mind just trying to keep you safe. And also the overthinking is more future-based. So it is like, what do I need to do for the future, like, and what's going to happen in the future. If you bring yourself into the current moment, there is no overthinking in the current moment, because what's happening in this current moment just is. So in this current moment, what is happening right now? Like, I'm just talking to you. I'll just explain that I've got 6 Oracle card boxes holding up my phone, which is actually like putting my phone on the computer. So I'm just going to focus on this. And when you focus on what's actually going on right now, you realize that you can cut off the concept of future or past, because if you think about time, and of course, you know, Einstein said that time is an illusion. So it is incredibly true, because our concept of time usually goes to past, present, and future. But if we look at the past has actually happened, so that doesn't actually exist anymore. And the future hasn't happened, so that doesn't exist. And this is where, you know, the concept of time comes from. And what that phrase means is that's an illusion, is because they don't exist. Nothing actually exists except for this current moment. But again, the conscious mind, and also how we've been taught to plan for the future, all that sort of thing. We have been taught that, and even to acknowledge that we have been taught to plan for the future. We've been taught to plan so that you're organised and that you have things set up, is all just programming, which is okay. That's just what's kept us safe in the past. Very effective when I want to enjoy the present and feel grateful. It's just, yeah, it's pretty much just acknowledging the past experiences and the past patterns that you've had, because again, when you acknowledge it, you don't have resistance over it. It then can say, okay, I'm done now, so I'm going to go, while you start then trusting the process, trusting the information that you're getting. So the way that I live and work is pretty much that, not thinking about the future, but knowing that in this current moment I'll be receiving what I need to do in this current moment, which will then affect my future. And this is where, again, like that time concept, that, you know, the future doesn't exist yet, but we can create the future from now. And as you can see, is that every second after this moment is a new present moment. And like, I want you to acknowledge too that in each second and each moment, we're actually new. We are actually changing, in that we're new. As human beings, we tend to be try and be a little bit more stagnant. We try and stay safe. stay comfortable or whatever, but that's actually not our natural being, and that's where people can start to find that they'll get a bit unhappy. Is we're not meant to stay in the same place, because think about it, from when you were an egg, you know, and you were fertilized, and you change and you grow every second. That is your natural way of being. And so if you then in your current life just want to stay where you are, it's actually going against that natural flow. So allow yourself to be okay with change, and allow yourself to be open to what is possible in the future from this current moment. And what happens is that when you bring yourself into this current moment, and then you receive what you need to know for the future, not in the future, you then act right now. And it's the same thing that whatever you want to create, I love you, whatever you want to create in the future, you need to create right now. And we can create that right now by having the awareness that everything that we have already exists in the current moment. Now, if you just acknowledge that right now and say that in this current moment I have a roof over my head, in this current moment I'm talking to you guys, which fills my heart with absolute joy, so I'm happy. So in this current moment I'm full of love and happiness, and I have a roof over the head. So for me to acknowledge that in this current moment then creates more of that, which hopefully, I'm not going to say hopefully, will, considering I don't have a house yet and I'm moving in a week. Again, I'm being used as the example of how to trust the process. I go out of it because I'm human, and I just want to acknowledge too that, you know, yes, I talk about this stuff, but I'm just as human as everyone else, and I shift out of all of this awareness just as easy as you do, but that's how I can talk about it and how to get back into it. And that's pretty much, this is a really basic little exercise on how to notice the difference between thinking and receiving. Again, pop down below any questions or anything that you have around the difference between thinking and receiving. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, and start with those basic numbers. And once you start getting used to receiving the numbers, then you can start asking more questions. And I'm really excited that next year I'm going to be running like a channeling club. I got told to call it the channeling club, but I don't know what it's going to be called. So what do you do when you receive information randomly, Jess? Hi, Jess. When you receive information randomly, well, again, we can process it depending upon, you know, what you need to know. So if the information you receive is like unexpected, usually I then use that as the next steps. Like everything that I receive is always about what I need to know. And so, yeah, and then anxiety and overwhelm doesn't actually happen when you use this process. And so random information that comes through is always part of our journey. And so even if it doesn't make sense in the current moment, trusting that it does is actually part of the next process. Of course, there's the action steps that go along with receiving that information. And again, if it doesn't make sense, we still need to, well, I've found that if we step into that and if we actually do those things, they lead to something else. And we could never plan what that's going to look like. It always ends up being like having no expectations on the outcome as to what an action step's going to do is so crazy good. So what happens is that when we then receive the information and then act on it, and even if it doesn't make sense, having no connection to the outcome as to what that's going to produce to us or for us, then it just takes us on this little, what you call the journey on, you know, where that can take us and what we can do with it. And it takes us, I find it takes us to different places that we never thought would actually, like we could never think it. We could never produce those situations or having those situations from us thinking about getting there. You can't think those action steps in because I don't know if it's making sense, but when you receive information on what you need to know and you just act on it without any connection to the outcome as to what it's going to do for you, that's when you're completely guided, being divinely guided on your path to whatever is aligned for you. And this is where you can't have a connection to what the outcome is going to be, because then you're opening yourself up to being taken along your journey, which is always aligned to who you really are. The other journeys, which we try and create, you'll probably find is harder work. I really call following the guidance that path of least resistance. Like if you want to get to a certain place, allow the guidance to take you there, but have no connection to what that's supposed to look like, because it always looks different to what we think. So when you receive information randomly, trusting that that is actually supposed to be for you and you're supposed to be going on that path. I mean, sometimes I do receive random information and it is for someone else. Again, it just sends, I end up not really taking notice of it, and then someone will mention, I'm like, oh my God, I meant to tell you that. Okay. So when you receive information randomly, get connected to the asking. I mean, yeah, just keep asking more questions as well. I mean, you just keep asking if it doesn't make sense, and go from there. I'll probably extend this in another webinar. I do want to do these more regularly, so we'll jump in and have a bit more of a conversation around all these next steps and receiving information. But just start with this first in receiving the guidance. Pop below how you're going with all of that, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me.